This is the Go Fungal Podcast. All right, so to kick things off, what is one word or a phrase that we should stop using?
Interesting that you mentioned that. So I started pouring beers at a brewery on weekends, and doing that, I've noticed that people say, "I'd like to try this beer," and we do have sample cups. So I'm like, "Well, do you want to try it, or do you want to try it?" And it's something that people say all the time. I've never thought about it. I catch myself doing it now, and it's one of those things that, being on the other side of the counter, I now hear it, and it has come back to me in a way that I will never unhear it, and will forever just commit instead of just saying I'm just gonna try it.
So if you go to a brewery, commit. It's a story about commitment, right? Like,
Yeah,
stop
exactly.
saying you're going to try things and just do things. Okay, I want
Just go for it.
that.
Go for the gusto.
Okay, good to know.
Yeah.
Good to know. Well, Dave, welcome to the show. Dave
Sure.
Ayling is a 10-year storyteller veteran and a filmmaker, and he has developed storytelling workshops for Fortune 50 companies, which we're going to talk a lot about that, and is also a professional air guitarist, much like myself. So, Dave, welcome.
Thank you, sir. Good to see you, Matt Cornelison, aka
Good.
Romeo Dance
You get
Cheetah.
to, yeah.
All right.
Yeah, people know. And
People
so
know.
we are both air guitar people, I guess, in the community, professionals maybe, or retired or whatever. But Dave, you were Rocktopus.
That's correct.
Was that the name that you always had? Because sometimes people change their names.
I have always had it. Right before I went to my first competition, I still didn't have a name, and I needed to come up with something. And so I just asked my buddy what should it be. He's like, I don't know, Rocktopus. And I was like, sounds great. Gonna go with it. Never changed.
Rolls right off the tongue.
It does.
It rock and rolls.
In fact, it does.
So if people watching this or listening to this don't know anything about air guitar, or didn't know that even I was an air guitarist, just do yourself a favor and just YouTube US air guitar or just air guitar, and you'll see a bunch of ridiculous videos.
In fact, look up Air of Supremacy starring the Matt Cornelison in Chicago in a brief guerrilla shot, no permits pulled video that we did in about 2 hours.
Yeah. We did a lot of things. We did a lot of illegal things in the name of good storytelling.
Exactly. And it does tell a little story. So, that's a nice one, and probably a decent segue.
Yeah, for sure. Well, let's get into that, because I want to talk about storytelling, what that means, I think, in the context of these workshops that you've taught, and what that skill even means. So you teach storytelling workshops, and that word
Correct.
Storyteller or storytelling means a lot of things, but we're really getting down to brass tacks here. We're talking about like a B2B sort of corporate business audience, or B2C, but people in the business world, so to speak. And you've taught workshops and are teaching workshops for people in that world. So I guess talk about that. What does that look like, and who, why would they need something like that?
Sure. So just because you're a great leader, you've risen through the ranks, you've done all these wonderful things, means that you can lead people, but there's different ways to engage people, and that's the critical difference. If you want to emotionally engage somebody, the best thing to do is to tell them a story. And so in order to move that needle of engagement, stories over and over are one of the darn finest ways that you can do that. And there's very simple ways that you can tackle that, which I can get into later. But
Well, and I think that's the kind of headline, right? Stories are the way to engage with people, to grab attention, to teach something, whatever that impact is.
Right.
I guess maybe kind of let's demystify that a little bit, because
Sure.
I think when some people hear stories, they're like, oh God, like this fluffy stuff, like, okay, once upon a time there was
actually, it's funny you say that too, because, stories are the main ways that we communicate, whether we realize it or not. It's the way that I can tell you about something that you haven't witnessed yourself, because otherwise, how would you know about it? I mean, the camera's not down in my shoes, but Matt, I'm going to tell you that I tied my shoes today, and you really wouldn't have any other reason to not believe me. It's not a great story, but it is one. It had a beginning and a middle not really very engaging. But Matt, I actually had a traumatic head injury a week ago, and it's a miracle that I can tie my shoes right now. And by the way, they're tied. A little bit more engaging, so
You've definitely got me hooked, and I don't know how far down that route. Well, so it's interesting. So yeah, I think that a lot of people do understand. Then we just communicate through stories as humans. That's the way that people communicate. Makes
right.
sense. I guess if we already communicate that way, what do we really need to improve?
That's a good point. So you can say, all right, guys, last quarter our financials were down and then they were up. So let's continue to have them go up. Does that sound good to everybody? Great. All right, moving on. Or you can say, all right, numbers were down. Why was that? Well, competition was actually catching up with us. We weren't as innovative as we could have been. And so in this next, and as you remember, in the next quarter, strategically, we started to push towards innovation and diversity in a lot of our business. And as we continue to go through that, we found great strides and put ourselves ahead in the market. And by continuing that trend, we're going to continue to get better and better and better. Who else has some great ideas about how we can continue that awesome line?
Right.
Which one would you prefer, Matt?
Yeah.
A little more verbose, sure, right?
Yeah, but you get the idea, right? There's a structure, and I think you're really talking a lot about there's the context and the why, right? It's
Right.
a really important factor, important part of a good story.
You actually just hit on you hit on the biggest thing, which is as a filmmaker, as a storyteller, as anybody who's trying to engage anybody else, you have to be answering your audience's persistent question of why. Why do I care? Why am I doing this? Why should I be listening to a guy with a golf hat right now? Well, the answer is I'm going to give you some good information and engage you.
Yeah, for sure. So let's talk about the audience for something like this. I mean,
Yeah.
the audience for this podcast, a lot of them are marketers, storytellers, creatives, people who really are trying to find ways to engage with their audience. But we don't always talk about sort of the team dynamic or how do you sort of become a better leader by improving storytelling as a skill, for example. So who are the people that you're teaching these workshops to and who really need this?
It's usually management and usually upper management of some sort. So if you're managing teams, you're constantly trying to make your team better. And the reason that you're doing that is to move metrics, obviously. But the most effective way to do that is to tap into their emotional core, figure out what they want, and then give it to them in a way that motivates them to improve. So let's say, Matt, you really like humor, and I know this about you.
I like a joke or two.
I know. And then, so if I was to say, Matt, your character work and talking to business leaders and making kind of jokes about that is really awesome. What I think can help you take that to the next level is A, B, and C. So meet you where you are, nicely show a point of improvement, and then suggest how to get there. That's a little once, but until, and then at last, Matt, is you want to be, an engaging, funny person, and you're going to get yourself there. I'm not going to do it for you. I'm just merely making a suggestion. But formatting things in a way to make people help reach their own conclusions and motivate them to the best of their own ability by just a couple little easy ways of formatting how you say things to emotionally engage them.
I like that. So, and it's interesting because, I mean, even being a storyteller myself,
Yeah.
it obviously it works on me too as the audience, right? Like once you sort of hit that, hey, this is who you are, and you kind of check that box. I'm like, I'm listening, because you met me
because
where
I actually
was.
see you. I actually see, and I'm acknowledging you, and I value you as an audience member. That's the biggest thing.
Right. Well, and that's really important for people to remember. I think some people just get really caught up. The problem, I think, that a lot of leaders, managers run into, in my experience, is they don't think about that aspect. I mean, they want to have, good leaders want to have an impact. They want to get people excited. They want people to rally around a message. They want people to go out and act. But a lot of times they can struggle with that communication part.
Right.
And that, bridging that gap and us, what we're calling storytelling, which is just sort of probably
It's
a lot of basic fundamental stuff here is
it's
kind of
basic
key for
fundamental,
success.
yeah. It's basic fundamental stuff, and it's the way that you can ride on the shoulders of giants through hundreds and hundreds of years, thousands of years of people relating to each other and telling stories and figuring out repeatable communication methodologies to help you maximize your emotional impact.
So let's talk about one of those methodologies. You actually said
Sure.
the name of it. You called it once something something something.
I
So
was I
what?
I attend yeah. I attended South by Southwest a few years ago. I was at a storytelling seminar, and it was great. But one of the slides that I feel like was way underutilized. He just said, storytelling is basically once but until it lasts. And I was like, I've been searching for an easy way to communicate with my clients. Okay, we're going to do storytelling. And I feel like the moment that you start to say that, it's like, what are the rules? I don't understand this. You went to school for this. I didn't. But if you had this simple little way to get on the same page quickly, then you can work together. And by doing once but until and it lasts, it helps out. So, Matt, you and I are of similar ages. Our audience is probably all over the board. But my guess is that we have one cultural touchstone that we can all rally behind, and that is the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. I feel like everyone has at least heard of the show. There is a remake of the show now, but we're talking the original, the 90s classic.
Yep, watched them all, seen them all.
Okay.
So
I as well.
okay.
And we remember the theme song, do we not?
Well, we sure do.
We sure do.
Are we about to wrap it? Right now?
Yes, we are. We were about to wrap
Yes.
quickly and probably not very well. But
Okay.
it follows once but until it lasts. So, graphics department, if you're out there, boop, 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 boop. I don't know if this is going to happen.
We'll figure
But
something
anyway,
out.
yeah. Once in West Philadelphia, born and raised on the playground, spending most of our days chilling out, maxing, relaxing, all cool, shooting some b-ball outside of the school, when a couple of guys that were up to no good, but started causing trouble in my neighborhood. One little fight, my mom got scared. She said, "You're moving with your auntie and uncle in Bel-Air." Went to the what's the place?
Whistle for a cab.
When it came near, yeah, thank you. Whistled for a cab, and when it came near, the license plates were fresh, and there was dice in the mirror. If anything, that I could say that this cab was rare, but I thought, nah, forget it. Yo, home to Bel-Air. I pulled up to the house about 7 or 8, and I yelled to the cab, "Yo, home, smell you later." Looked at my kingdom. I was finally there, sit on my throne as the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. It's all there. It's all there. Once but until and it lasts.
So the once was this is what happened in the past to kind of set the context for the foundation of the story.
Yeah, it's where it's current setting. It's where we are right now, right?
Okay.
Now, if we were to have a show where we just watched Will Smith play basketball all day without any sort of repercussions, that show would last 3 episodes and be canceled like almost immediately. It's just not very exciting.
Right.
Now, the fact that he's a fish out of water, right? His hometown gets too rough. He goes now to Bel-Air, where he's total fish out of water, bringing his wisecrack and street wiseness is awesome. It's a great premise for a show, and it works over and over and over again because there's tension, a little bit, and relief. And in each and every episode, you're going to have a once, but, until, and it lasts.
Okay, so that's kind of the structure when you break it down.
Right.
Once, but
until and it lasts.
At last. Okay.
Yeah, so Kurt Vonnegut did his thesis on the shapes of stories, and that follows kind of a typical man in a hole story. There's a man, he falls down a hole, and then he gets back out again. The end.
Okay.
Technically a story, right? Not very engaging. The hole was interesting, I guess, but and the fact that he made it out of it. But other than that, it's a bit of an up and down. The guy wants to get someplace, he falls in a hole, and he gets back out again.
Right.
If you think about it, that's once but until and it lasts. The time that you take between those things depend on what content you're covering and how emotionally draining you want to get with your audience. Because you can't spend forever down in the valley. You have to get them out.
Yep.
So, and then that can be quick. I think with clients, a lot of times when I said, but oftentimes clients shy up at that concept. They don't want to talk about the negatives. They don't want to talk about things that get in the way or foibles or past performance. Telling a story and improving is not an indictment of past performance. It's a method to get better. And the thing is, by putting it out there and talking about it, we are engaging people so they don't make the same mistakes of the past, or we collectively get together and move on. And that's what is powerful about it, if that makes any sense at all.
Yeah, totally. Well, I wonder if we could like make, what are some contexts to how a leader or manager might use these techniques? So like obviously just general communication is one thing, but one of the things that's coming to mind is, when you're trying to present an idea or make a compelling case.
That's the biggest thing. You just said it. When you need to make an emotional case for something, it may not, or you want to make data become emotional and have a point to it. That's really when this storytelling methodology can become very powerful, right? But let's say we're talking a Ford plant who wants to focus on safety. Well, obviously safety is going to be the biggest thing. Humor could be in safety, could be touchy. Maybe. It depends on the audience. The biggest thing, and if you're, we're talking about how to do it for, if you're a creative and you're trying to nail down and really get to the heart of delivering something for a B2B client, the biggest thing and the best service that you can do to yourself is take a minute and get to know the audience, not your client, who it's going to, the actual audience. What do they like? What motivates them? What's in their heart? What are their fears? What do they find brings that is kind of the big meaning of success at the end of the day. Now, if you know those things, filling in the once but until it lasts actually becomes far easier. You plot those out, you gather some content, and then the story becomes a lot clearer. I always feel like creativity is leaping from one thing to another, but by doing that, you're just pushing that gap closer together, and then it becomes very, very easy. Work smarter, not harder, in that way. It's only going to be better for you and your client.
Yeah, for sure. And I think I'm thinking of practical ways that people can start to use storytelling, right? And I think
I did get a little off base, yeah.
Well, I think that the once but until at last is a great format, right, to follow, and you can pretty much plug any kind of story into that. You don't have to use those exact words, but if you follow that structure, I think addition to that, sometimes just telling a story of something that happened, or of someone or of someone that your audience knows, as a way to illustrate. Let's say you're trying to talk to your sales team, for example, and you're trying to really get your message out, telling a story of success, of how somebody lived your values, or somebody that kind of followed that direction before and they found their own success, can be a powerful way to follow that same format.
It can be. And I think you made me think of a lot of things when you were saying that. So one of the things, if you look at the bell curve of successful people in a company, my work at Root really was for moving the middle of the bell curve just over a little bit into the more positive side. The top performers are going to be top performers. The bottom is going to be the bottom. But if you can affect the middle just a little bit and engage them, that is millions or billions of dollars if you can move that bubble a little bit, which really became the goal. And so the methods to figure out how to do that in the most effective manner possible was always the North Star, and ever changing, but affecting the mass of people was always the target goal. So they look to top performers. They say, "What is your secret? What do you do?" Top performers don't know what they do. They just do it. That's why they're the top performers. They don't even think about it. They don't, and what it takes is actually looking at them and figuring out what they do and then breaking it down. Now, are you supposed to remember all these things? No. What's a good way to do it? Put it into a story or a song or a something. That's the way that can be an effective way to do it.
Yeah.
So
an effective way for people to remember and be able to share it again, right?
Yeah. I mean, this is why we have cautionary tales, fables, these things, a tortoise and the hare, these cultural reference points that we have, Flying Too Close to the Sun. These are all story references to help guide
Yep.
us and teach us things in a very quick, short format.
Let's talk about the business context some more. And what are some of the results, impacts? Again, you've taught people
Mhm.
storytelling through workshops. We've done the same here. We're actually developing that offering through Fungi because we know the power of storytelling. Obviously, we're already doing it on behalf of our clients,
Yeah.
but we know that it's a skill that really is vital for everybody to be successful in business. Um, but when people go through these workshops, what is the impact results? What are they saying? Like, help paint the picture of that, the payoff, I suppose.
The payoff really is that if you have a team of people, uh, you have the ability to get to know them and to help motivate them in a repeatable and effective manner. Um, that you are able to go into any sort of networking thing at your either a business luncheon or just, hey, a straight up networking event, and introduce yourself effectively and memorably. There was a great study, some California university, I can't remember, but it basically said that between reality and the stories that we tell ourselves is actually where we live our life. So we're always motivating towards
Mm.
something or thinking about the next thing. And we're just kind of one step ahead of reality and kind of experience that almost retrospectively. And I thought that was a really interesting thing. So if you can tune up your storytelling ability, you kind of have you can make a clearer picture for yourself, a more achievable picture of yourself, and have a better story at the output when you're looking back.
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah,
You're kind of shaping your destiny, so to speak, uh,
exactly. Yeah.
by hunting those chops.
Hmm.
And I think it's interesting. It's funny to call ourselves, I call myself a storyteller. If you look up LinkedIn, you'll see like Matt Cornelison,
Yeah,
storyteller, entertainer. Um, but it is really a human It's like creativity, right? Like
it
we
is.
are innately storytellers. We learn how to do it our whole lives. But just like any skill, it is certainly something that you can always continue to improve, and you can
Right.
always, especially if you have you want to make a bigger impact to your organization, for your team, if you want to give people clarity in the
Hmm.
message you're trying to communicate, if you want to get people to engage in a compelling way with, whether it's for marketing purposes out in the world. I mean, this is a skill set that's used for all of these different applications. But these are skills that you can learn, you can apply, and hey,
Yeah.
there are ways to do that. So
Everybody is a storyteller. The only thing that differentiates a potter from someone who, messes around with clay is the potter has more reps and learns more. You
mm.
know, just do it and do it better and think about what you're doing, and you can add storyteller to your LinkedIn profile. We
Well, I
all do it.
like that structure. Everybody should maybe do a little research. Go rewatch the opening to the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air.
Yeah.
Follow that once,
Once, but
but
until, and yeah.
until at last.
I
Right?
feel like you were doing that like it's going to appear in your hands.
I hope it does.
I hope it does too.
Well, this is awesome. I think that, obviously you're kind of preaching to the choir here, but everybody listening, watching this,
Yeah.
let's start honing those chops, baby. Um,
It's not hard. It's not hard. Just a little attention to detail does it. That's it.
yeah, for sure.
Creativity and performance and storytelling is not hard if you slow down and pay attention.
Absolutely. I think that's a perfect way to wrap this baby up.
Okay.
Awesome. Well, hey, Dave, thank you so much for dropping some knowledge bombs.
Yeah, man.
Your storytelling chops, always welcome. Thank you for being on the show.
Thank you, buddy. Thanks for having me.
El Fango.